Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive into English numbers?
I'm ready. It's a perfect topic, really.
I think so too, especially for those just starting out with English.
Definitely. And we've got a great episode to pull from learning English with podcasts.
Yeah, Shiro and Maria, the hosts, really make it easy to understand.
Absolutely. They break things down step by step and make it fun, too.
So true. So, are you ready to jump in?
Oh, absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay, great. So let's start with the basics, numbers 1 through 10.
Gotta start somewhere, right?
Exactly. But even though they're basic, mastering these is super important.
It really is. It's like the foundation for everything else.
Like building a house, you need that solid base.
Exactly. Now, what's interesting is that Shiro and Maria don't just list the numbers, they give some really good tips on pronunciation.
Yeah. And some of them are pretty surprising, like, did you know that the W in two is silent?
Really?
Yeah, it's more like two stew.
Wow, I never thought about that. See, always something new to learn.
I know, right? It's fascinating how language works.
Totally. And they actually encourage listeners to repeat the numbers out loud.
Yeah, that's great advice. Repeating can really help with pronunciation.
It trains your tongue and brain to work together.
It does. Okay, so we've got 1 through 10 down.
What's next?
Well, now things get a little trickier with 11 through 20.
Yeah, that's where a lot of people trip up.
Yeah, but the podcast highlights that most of these numbers follow a pattern, adding teen to the end.
Right. Makes it a little easier to remember, huh?
Definitely. Except for 11 and 12, those are the odd ones out.
They like to be unique.
They do. But I think Shiro and Maria had a good point about emphasizing the teen sound.
Yeah, like 14, 15, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Helps you sound more natural when you're speaking.
Oh, that's a great tip.
And it's interesting how different languages put emphasis on different parts of words.
I know. It's amazing how much variety there is.
Okay, so we've conquered the teens.
Feeling pretty good about it.
Now let's zoom ahead to counting by tens.
20, 30, 40.
Yeah, this is super helpful for quick calculations and for getting a sense of the bigger picture.
Like if you need to count a large group of something quickly.
Exactly. And the podcast points out that handy appetit pattern.
Right. Makes it easy to remember.
Except for 40, it decided to drop the U from 4.
Oh, English. Always got to be a little different.
Keeps things interesting. But once you've got the tens down, how do you combine them with the numbers 1 through 9?
I'm curious about that too. It's actually pretty simple. You just say the tens number and then the single digit.
Oh, okay. So like 21, 45, 99.
Exactly. You got it.
And they did mention adding a hyphen when you write it out.
Oh, right. Like 21 with a hyphen.
Yeah, it's a small detail, but it makes your writing look better.
It's all about those little things, right? And don't forget to pause slightly when you say these numbers out loud.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
It helps to make it clear you're saying 21 and not 20 and 1 separately.
Exactly. It's like a little rhythm in the language.
So we've got the tens and the ones, but what about the hundreds and beyond?
Now we're getting into the big leagues.
I know, it seems like a huge jump.
It's not as scary as it sounds, though.
Really?
Yeah, the podcast explains how to use "and" to connect the hundreds with the rest of the number.
Okay, so 101 or 523.
Precisely.
So it's really just building on what we've already learned.
Exactly. It's like those building blocks you were talking about. You start with the foundation, and then you can build anything.
That makes me feel a lot better, actually, because I was a little intimidated by those bigger numbers.
I totally get it. But the good news is you don't need to memorize every single combination.
Oh, thank goodness.
The English number system is pretty logical. Once you understand the patterns, you can figure out any number.
That's so reassuring. So it's not about memorizing, it's about understanding the system.
Exactly. But okay, let's talk about how we actually use all this in real life.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking, like, how does this translate into everyday conversations?
Well, Shiro and Maria give a lot of great examples in the podcast, like, think about giving your phone number.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Or telling time, understanding prices at a store.
All things you need to do all that.
Exactly. Imagine traveling to a new country and being able to confidently use numbers.
That would be amazing. I wouldn't have to rely on my calculator so much.
Or hand gestures.
Exactly. It's about being able to communicate and understand.
It really is. And that's what makes language learning so rewarding. It opens up so many possibilities.
Oh, I totally agree. Now, I remember they had a little challenge in the podcast for listeners.
What was it?
They asked you to try saying some numbers out loud, like 23, 47, 89, 105, and even 1,234.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It is. Do you want to give it a try?
Sure, why not? Expert speaker practices saying the numbers. How did I do?
You sounded great. You're a natural.
Thanks. But you know what they even suggested, taking it a step further?
Oh, really?
They said to try making up sentences using those numbers, like, there are 23 books on my shelf, or the train leaves at 10:47.
Oh, that's a fun idea. It's like putting those numbers into action.
Exactly. It makes it more engaging and helps you remember them better.
I love it.
Huh.
Okay, so we've talked about the patterns and how to use numbers in real life, but mastering anything takes practice.
It does. What did the podcast recommend for really getting those numbers down?
Well, they stress the importance of practicing consistently, even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
Yeah, a little bit every day goes a long way.
It really does. And they also emphasized active listening, paying attention to how native speakers pronounce the numbers, and trying to mimic their rhythm and intonation.
It's like tuning your ear to the music of the language.
Yeah, exactly.
Huh?
And it's okay to slow down and enunciate clearly, especially when you're first starting out.
Right. It's more important to be clear than to rush through it.
Absolutely.
And you know what? Don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Oh, that's a big one.
It is. Everyone makes mistakes, especially when they're learning something new.
It's how we learn, right?
Exactly. Mistakes are just proof that you're trying.
And pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone.
It's all part of the process.
So true. I think what's really cool about all this is that learning numbers is about so much more than just memorizing a sequence
It is. It's about gaining confidence in using the language
and understanding how it works.
and being able to communicate effectively.
It opens up a whole new world.
Yeah.
But we've been talking about numbers in isolation. What happens when we start using them in different contexts?
Oh, that's where things get really interesting. Like when you start thinking about measurements, using numbers to describe length, weight, volume.
Oh, yeah. Like baking a cake or measuring fabric for a project.
Exactly. Or splitting a restaurant bill with friends.
That's a good one.
Numbers are everywhere.
They really are. So once you have those basics down, you can start exploring all these different applications.
Exactly. It's like taking your English to the next level.
I like that. So for someone who's just starting out, it's all about building that foundation with those core numbers and then branching out.
You got it. Start small and gradually work your way up.
And the learning never really stops, does it?
No. There's always something new to discover with language.
That's what makes it so fascinating.
Yeah.
I think what really stood out to me from this deep dive was how much Shuro and Maria focused on making learning numbers fun and practical.
Me too. They made it feel less like a chore and more like an exciting challenge.
And they gave some really great tips for making it stick.
They did. Like practicing consistently, even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
Yeah, and paying attention to how native speakers pronounce the numbers.
And don't be afraid to make mistakes.
That's so important.
Yeah.
Mistakes are part of the learning process.
They are. It shows you're trying.
And that you're not afraid to push yourself.
Exactly. So to everyone listening out there, if you're feeling a little intimidated by English numbers, don't worry.
It's definitely achievable.
It is. Just remember to start with the basics, practice regularly, and have fun with it.
Those are great takeaways. And who knows, maybe someday you'll be the one teaching others about English numbers.
I love that idea, sharing what you've learned and helping others along the way.
It's a great feeling. So keep practicing, stay curious, and keep exploring the world of English numbers.
We'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.